This is what I want to share. So you should be seeing my gamification slide, correct?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So let's see if good. Okay. So I have a few text-heavy slides. I apologize for those. Those are only where I want a complete quote. And this is from Chris Aviles, who's a classroom teacher and an awesome gamifier. He says, before gamification, I designed my classrooms around objective standards, learning outcomes, and assessments. Not once did I consider the student experience. Not once did I consider what it was like to be a student in my class. But now, because of gamification, I start with my kids in mind. Thanks to gamification, his classes are designed, get this, around having a fun and exciting learning experience. So he went from objective standards, outcomes, assessments, to a fun and exciting learning experience. He looks at all the things he does as a teacher through the lens of making it as enjoyable as possible. That's one of the key takeaways for this. It's not the specific way you do it, but that should be the result. So first, what is gamification? Well, again, I use Chris's definition. It's my favorite. It's use of game mechanics and elements in non-game contexts. So you want to make something more interesting, let's say multiplication of fractions, that's not a game by itself. You add game mechanics and elements, the things that kids love about video games, you put them in your classroom. And your classroom doesn't use games, it becomes a game. So what's a game? What do we mean by that? Well, there are some interesting little connections and disconnections here. So a game is usually defined as a voluntary activity. It has well-defined rules and a well-defined goal. So there's a win state. Sometimes there are winners and losers. And as we think of gamifying a classroom, we need to think about what parts of games we want to include and what don't we want to. But fundamentally, a game is fun to play. It's not too different from a sport. Why does somebody want to play again and again and again? Now, these aren't new ideas. So here's something from Plato. That's not, by the way, a true-to-life photo of Plato. But no compulsory learning can remain in the soul. In teaching kids, we train them by a kind of game. Well, some teachers still and some parents think, oh, games must be evil. Aren't they violent? And we think of Grand Theft Auto. But this is a big deal. Games are huge. So step one in this conversation is going to be talking about games, and we'll get back to gamification. Grand Theft Auto 5 earned $1 billion in its first 3 days, more than the whole global music industry. This is a big part of our culture. It's bigger than the motion picture industry. There are more women gamers than men. The average age of gamers is 35 years old. This is a core part of our culture. It ought to be a part of our classrooms. Well, what is so special about games, and who's taking advantage of it for, let's say, noble purposes? Something called serious games that are now used in medical and surgical training, war games, business training, worth about $10 billion in the European market last year. And I'll give you just one example. Maersk is the largest ship owner in the world. They do oil drilling and stuff. How do you recruit an oil driller? You don't learn that in school. Well, they created a video game called Quest for Oil. And there are 3 components. This is it. And how do they know if someone knows the concepts of how do you actually drill in the sea bottom for oil? Well, there's a game. You level up, you get points. If you apply to them for a job, they look at your game score. And they actually did a study, and they said, wow, students were really interested in exploring the universe of oil, regardless of how they did in school. It was the visual elements of the game that really made an impact. The kids said they got a really different feel for learning through the game. So it's big both for entertainment, but also for training in the real world. Well, why do students play games? Let's get into the why. Again,
Joe, stop.
go ahead. I thought I heard a stop. Okay, so is gaming an antisocial act? You know, some people think that. Well, now this is I was a classroom teacher for 20 years. I hope my students didn't look like this, but that's an exaggeration of students aren't always engaged in school. And here's a kid in a game. He looks like he's having fun. He's definitely engaged. Are games fun? Is this kid having fun? I don't see a smile on his face, but he's engaged, very deeply engaged. So in school, we know without attention, there's no perception, no learning. School needs continual attention because it's always something new for kids. That's right and proper. Deeper understanding needs deeper engagement, the kind of engagement that games provide. So gamification traditionally is characterized by these 4 steps. First, there's an activity where we want people to do more of it or we want them to do it better. Often, it's not an intrinsically interesting activity, like learning the multiplication of fractions or maybe learning the various social studies concepts that some of our participants tonight teach. So points are given to reward whatever the desired behavior is, as points are given in a game. And then when you reach certain milestones, maybe that's like leveling up, you get a badge. Maybe you get the 8 times table badge or the prepositions 1 badge or whatever. And then leaderboards might show how you compare with other top scorers, maybe in your class, your school, wider than that. So those are the 3 elements that are often identified in gamification: points, badges, leaderboards. And we'll take a closer look at some of these. So a game involves normally intrinsic motivation, that you want to do something for its own sake. If that's a new idea for you, just read Dan Pink's short book called Drive, and that'll give you the whole picture. But basically it says that people love to engage in challenging activities, sometimes really hard things, when they control the difficulty. That was popularized in the book Flow by a guy whose name is almost unpronounceable, Csikszentmihalyi. Everybody calls him Mike for obvious reasons. But games adjust to a player's skill, their prior knowledge, through levels. If you think of your classes, you get a group of kids with all different skill levels and backgrounds, and often we try to teach them one sort of level of content. And there's a difference between games and many school kinds of learning, in that games have that ability to adjust to players' skills. In gamifying a classroom, it would be great if you could in some way incorporate that leveling up, that ability to adjust to different skill levels. We have teachers of the gifted in our session tonight, teachers with various learning disabilities, and regardless of the group you have, there are different levels of interest in whatever, and adjusting to those levels is key. You level up when you master, and that means when you learn whatever the current skill or knowledge is of that level. Whether it's a game, in a game you learn the skills of a level. When you've mastered them, you level up and you learn new skills, whether they're shooting skills or strategy skills, problem solving. In a classroom, they might be math or social studies, science, English skills, or Spanish skills. So more specifically, why do people play? What engages them so deeply in games? Lepper and Malone, decades ago, identified 4 characteristics of games that make kids want to come back to play over and over and over again. And the authors this year continue to use those 4 levels. First is challenge. No kid wants to play an easy game. Now, how often in school have you heard or have you wanted to hear, oh, here's an easy way to do it? Does any kid want to play an easy game? Do you want to play a harder level or an easier level? Every kid wants the harder level. Every kid wants a challenge. In sports, do you want to play a challenging opponent or somebody you know you can beat? So games handle that challenge through levels. Curiosity. Can I solve this problem? What's around this corner? What's in the next level? We start a new chapter in a textbook by saying, here are all the things you'll do. We take away that curiosity, that discovery. And then control. That's student agency. That means the student is in greater control or is in as much control as possible. So if the student feels like they can say, oh, I want to go back to an easier level, or I want to stay at this level, or I'm tired of this, I want to move on, they have some control, or even stopping the game, I need a break. Those are some of the key elements of that flow state that I mentioned. And fantasy plays a role. So, and I'm not going to talk about fantasy tonight, but that's a hidden element, a sleeper element. Think of, why is Harry Potter such a gripping thing for every kid? How about the Lord of the Rings series? It's deep fantasy, and people get lost in that, kids and adults. Seymour Papert, if you're familiar with him, has labeled this idea of challenge and curiosity control as hard fun. So when we think of it as fun, that doesn't necessarily mean party hats and ha-ha and laughter. That means the satisfaction of deep engagement. More recently, with networked games, social interaction has become an additional element of engagement. And there are 3 levels of that. So it can be competition. So in a one-on-one tennis game, that's competition. But in a football game or a baseball game, there's more collaboration probably than there is competition among your team members. And then the leaderboard provides recognition. So here's a serious game. It's called Fold It. And you can, for no cost, get on the foldit.com or foldit.it and engage in the challenging task of protein folding. And you get points for doing this, and you see a leaderboard on the right and scores. So they use all of these techniques, but there's a challenge. It's hard. And the leading players have solved protein folding puzzles that have baffled top scientists for years. So this is just an example of something where gamification has done some pretty powerful things. I've touched on what makes games interesting. I haven't talked about how do we actually learn through games. So let's take just one slide for that. So in a game, you learn by doing. There's not an instruction manual that you go through before you play the game. You don't listen to a long list of directions before you do it. You learn by doing. That's a very natural way of learning. You also learn by failing. That's not only okay, it's expected. No kid starts a game expecting to succeed level after level after level. They expect to fail and learn from it and try again. If our gamification does not include failure, there are parts that we're missing in translating what makes games so powerful to gamification. Social learning can be help or competition. In my in all of my classrooms, from my fifth grade and fourth grade classrooms when I was a classroom teacher, all the way up through my grad classrooms. You get help from any student who can give it to you. That's a simple way to gamify your classroom. Allow that social learning. Games provide multiple levels of instances of feedback per second often. We call it formative feedback, and as educators, we're pleased if we can give one element of formative feedback in a classroom period. A game does it, you're just bombarded by formative feedback. So I don't know any classroom teacher who has ever approached the level of feedback that a game provides, but that's something that can be a goal. The more feedback that we provide through all sorts of levels, not judgmental, but feedback that lets you know how you're doing. Am I getting it? Am I learning it? Am I successful? That's high-powered gamification. A way to provide challenge and mastery to level up, and that business of if you can get kids engaged in something they know is hard. I tell my students in advance, not this is going to be easy. That bores them. I tell them this is going to be hard, but you can do it. You're going to have to work at it, and you'll get help. It's going to be hard. You'll succeed. Whoops, let's go forward instead of back. So in games and in life, how do we assess learning? We certainly don't give an end of chapter test. The assessment is authentic. It's built into every good game, every good sport, and into life. Assessment isn't something separate from the activity. So one way to gamify an activity is to have the assessment built right into the activity, not as a separate test. You demonstrate your understanding by applying your learning in the game or the activity or whatever. So what's the big test of gamification if you've got it right? The tough test is if kids want to play it more. So there's a cool gaming company in Easton. They did the Math 24 game, and I'm forgetting their name. Doesn't matter. SunTech is the overall company. Anyway, but they have a game that kids like to play outside of school, and it teaches them math skills. So they've gamified it beautifully. If kids want to play your gamified activity at home, if they tell their parents and friends, wow, that was really cool, I want to do it again, you've succeeded. You've gamified successfully. So there are three elements of great gamification. And this comes from Sebastian Detterding, and I'll give you a link for my three favorite resources. He says, focus on the meaning of an educational activity, its value for its own sake, not just for the points you get, not just for the badges, but if it's not intrinsically interesting, kids may like to play it for the points, but they may focus on the points and not the learning. Now, in the opposite of intrinsic motivation is extrinsic motivation. And the research kind of shows that if people do things just for extrinsic motivation, for the money they get, for the points they get, for whatever, when they stop getting the money or the points, they stop doing the activity. I think we see this in reading in our whole culture. Kids get reading grades all the way through school. They get out of school and they stop reading. Rather than the expectation that the enjoyment and interest in reading is its own reward, an intrinsic motivation which would suggest they want to continue reading. So mastery, figure out some way of scaffolding challenge in your course. How you do it is there's no magic way. You can find how other teachers have done it, and resources I'll give you will point you in that direction. But that scaffolded challenge that leads to mastery at each level. You master before you move up. You master before you move up. Khan Academy does that. That's one of the secrets. And autonomy. So autonomy can mean giving choice. Would you like to play this game or this game? What role would you like to play in the game? Do you want to be a leader or a follower? Do you want to be a wizard or whatever? So however much you can increase student autonomy, you increase their intrinsic motivation and their engagement. The more it's your game and not theirs, the more it's, okay, our game follows my rules and you have no say in it, the less engagement you can expect. And the last word from Chris Aviles, he says, I look at things I have to do as a teacher through the lens of making it as enjoyable as possible for as many students as possible. And this part I love. You can create a great gamified classroom just by focusing on the student experience. And he combines 3 things with education: game design, design thinking, and the user experience, mixing them up with his curriculum. And he creates a gamified classroom that sometimes uses points, but not always. Sometimes uses badges, but not always. Sometimes uses leaderboards, but not always. But the focus on making learning fun. So to recap, way back from Plato, no compulsory learning can remain in the soul. We teach children through a kind of game. And Marshall McLuhan's little gem of wisdom: anybody who tries to make a distinction between education and entertainment doesn't know the first thing about either. Your administrator may or may not agree with that, but we won't worry about that tonight. The 3 sources I referenced are these, and if the recording is going, you can find them. But just to touch base on what each one is, Chris Aviles is a teacher, I believe, in New Jersey. He's a blogger. And just on his own, he wrote this gamification guide, which is incredible. And you can just go to his site, techedupteacher.com, download his gamification guide, and you'll get more tips than I could possibly put in. Oh, it helps if I would spell gamification correctly, too. Oh, well, apologize. But then I can put into an hour session. Sebastian Detterding has a cool tech talk. He gave it to Google. It's a little less than an hour. And he called it Meaningful Play, Getting Gamification Right. So the idea being that gamification has often been presented as kind of a rah-rah, you can have fun, as opposed to you can learn deeply. In a game, I want a game I can get engaged in. Everybody wants that. A sport that will challenge me, that I can get into, not one that I'm laughing about and ha-ha backslapping. It's not that kind of fun. It's hard fun, like Seymour Papert says. So Sebastian Detterding he's fun. Carl Kapp is a Pennsylvanian. Some of you may know of his work. He teaches at I'm going to forget the name of his school too, but one of the state schools. Any of you who know him, just kind of shout that out. I know, but I just have a brain block. But he's one of the most popular current authors of actual books on gamifying learning. This is his sort of classic book. And in it, he deals mostly with the corporate world, but A lot of his stuff it has to it has to save companies money and time and really work, or it doesn't work. So it's not just fun and games, it's high quality stuff. So I encourage you to check into Carl Kapp, who focuses not on fun and games, but on making something interesting to learn in a way that it's learned deeply. And I don't have the title handy of this upcoming book, ISTE book on gamification, but you're welcome to check that out with my chapter on getting gamification right. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite questions, comments, thoughts. So out of that, and I know Sarah was bouncing in and out. So if I know she has lots of ideas, but she may not have been connected to much of it. But I know she can throw out her comments. Scott, I'd love to hear anything that you liked, questioned, want to comment on from the little chat. Okay, Barbara, would you like to take over? Go for it. And Barb, you have to unmute your mic. And that's the lower left-hand corner. Move your mouse and you can do it. There you go.
There it is. I was just wondering how to initiate it. How do you start with entering it into the classroom?
Okay. So I'll give some thoughts, but the rest of you feel free to hop in. So I like to start small. So it can be something you can something I often do is offer choice. So for a homework assignment, let's say, if it's a written assignment, I may say, okay, you can do this in writing, or if you'd like to make a little video with your comments or a little narrated slide presentation, you can do that. So choice is one. Another way with points, we often think in school that, oh, you start with 100% and then we dock you points. In a game, you never start with a high score, you start with 0. So one easy way is, okay, you get so many points for this for completing this activity, so many for that, so many for this. So you build your points, and the magic number of 100% becomes less important. You can have a leaderboard if you want. I tend not to do that. I personally don't like the comparison in that way unless students choose to compare themselves. The idea of challenge. So think of, Barbara, what do you teach?
I'm the librarian at a middle school. So we have kids in 8th grade. Okay.
So books to read. So when I give kids my kids are as old as you are, my students, book choices. Occasionally I will say, oh, this one is a fast read, or this is an easier read, because I have some international students for whom English is not their first language. But I often will say, this is a pretty academic book. You'll have to work pretty hard to read this. Or this is really long, but it's really great. So I try to give them that challenge. I did that all the way back with my 5th graders. In learning something new, I'll say something, okay, this is something really new. You may not have heard of it before, but I know you can do this. It might be hard, but you can do it. if you have trouble, remember that it's hard for everybody, so you just ask for help. You can ask me, but you may want to ask another student or your parents or brother or sister. So the idea that, yes, it's hard, but you get help from your friends, from your community. I've changed the name of all of my projects in my grad class to challenges. So they are no longer projects or papers, they are challenges. And every kid picks up on that term. They know what that means. You can call it a quest. So, you know, whatever. So in library land, you could create a book quest. For each book, and you can imagine on a bulletin board creating a torturous path, and the quest is to discover things, reach the end, and each book completed is a milestone, which could be a badge if you want. But calling it a badge is not as important as putting it in the context of, this is a challenge. I'm not making it easy for you. Challenges are not easy, but you can do it, and you grow through your challenges, and you'll love it.
Thank you.
Sure. And Missy mentioned Powerups, so that's another cool thing. So kids understand Powerups, so maybe each time maybe they get points by the number of pages they've read, and then completing a book gives them a power up. They get 20 extra pages or whatever. And M. Tobias, Matt, you can just kind of, you know, click the mic and share.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see, do you have any games that you can give us suggestions that we could use in our classroom?
In social studies, Civilization is an awesome game from middle school on up. It suffers the problem of many games in that a deeply engaging game from middle school on up takes longer than a class period. And some games allow you to save a game and pick up where you left off. But kids, when they're engaged, they want to keep on playing. So one option could be, an activity could be, okay, you can do a research report, or you can play Civilization. And I'm going to want to see screenshots of the highest level. Whenever you level up, show me a screenshot. That's like handing in an assignment. SimCity is great for what it teaches. A little bit of economics, a little bit of governance, a little bit of social services. There are lots of the commercial games tend not to fit neatly in a class period. But if you allow it to extend beyond the class period in some way, through home or come to school early or stay late, or there are lots of ways you can do it. Each teacher figures out a way that works for them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Zian and Sue, you came in after people introduced themselves. So would you mind introducing yourself? What do you teach? Where are you?
Sorry, I had a little trouble navigating my way through this. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly, Sue.
Okay, I teach K-5 technology and enrichment in the Milton School District.
And remind me where Milton is. I should know.
It's pretty much the center of the state, practically. It's in the CSIU 16.
Oh, okay.
Near Lewisburg, if you're familiar with Bucknell University. I'm close to that.
Sure. Okay. And Zian, okay, so you're in a Catholic school near Pittsburgh. Okay. I gave a talk at the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf in Pittsburgh, which was very interesting. 1 or 2/3 of the faculty I was speaking to were deaf, totally deaf, and that was a very interesting experience. But anyway, Scott, I'd be interested in hearing any of your comments or questions about the talk. Jen, same for you, and Sarah.
Hi, I'm Barb Sorter. I'm Caitlin, and you said about deaf.
Yes.
Cool. I'm fluent. I'm somewhat fluent in sign language. So
Oh,
that
I can see.
for me.
Okay. At that time, I proposed that they should be teaching sign language through video conferencing. Web conferencing didn't exist then, to students who needed it all through the state. And to this day, I'm mystified by why that suggestion wasn't like, oh, great, that's a wonderful idea. Nobody did anything about it. It's probably my fault for not advocating it properly.
I guess I could speak a little bit to how our students use gamification in the classroom. The students that I serve are students with severe emotional and behavioral disorders. Many of them come to us with their grade levels behind. We find that technology is definitely a way to actively engage them. And as we move through the Sandler model, the more engaged they are, the more their behaviors decrease. One game that we use with our students is Class Compete. It's an app and it's web-based. And it's a way for students to practice their math facts, but teachers can also input their own questions. So we found that our students, although it's a very competitive environment, many of them struggle with that in the classroom and struggle with it in a class like gym class, or any kind of a game that they could lose really is very challenging for this population of students. But in the computer environment, they're a little bit more receptive to the feedback. And I think that a lot of that has to do with their experiences with video games. So they're likening their learning to the more video game environment. And that seems to be helpful.
So Sarah and I actually were part of a team that evaluated Class Compete and wrote a white paper on this. And it's an intriguing program. It was created for the purpose of giving kids practice in timed, let's say timed drills, but in a video game context, so that they would be comfortable with timed tests and not be overly anxious and perform poorly because of their anxiety. So the program is Class Compete, very interesting. I mentioned Math 24, and the company is First in Math. So that's just firstinmath.com. And it's math. That doesn't help you guys who are social studies and Spanish teachers, but that's a highly successful program that uses team-based competitive practice. And again, one of the big benefits of this that I did not include in my presentation is that one of the key ways of learning is that you have to practice what you've just learned. And in education, we tend not to do that very well. So one of you was a Spanish teacher. So in Spanish, something that you practice a lot is learned instantly and never forgotten. Something that you learn once and then you move on to another chapter and don't get back to it, don't learn it a lot, you forget it very rapidly. So games provide that rigorous over and over and over practice that otherwise is hard to be fun in school. Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
So our version of gamification at the high school level in social studies and gifted is we use Breakout EDU quite a bit. And whether I use the physical boxes with the actual locks and the hasps and all that stuff, or which takes a little bit of time to set up, or I'll use the digital versions, which are absolutely free to use. I don't need any resources. I just have to go to the website, grab a game that is appropriate. And what I like about the digital versions is that I can put the kids in pairs to work or threesomes versus just splitting them in half. So it gets a deeper level of engagement with each individual kid. There's not that kid who's disengaging and kind of staying on the periphery. They have to engage, and it's a competition. I mean, I have no shame. I do prizes like ring pops or something in first place, and they get into it.
Sure. So the prizes idea it's an interesting thing. And you know, points and paying kids for things. We don't do that in school so much, but grades also. The way that the researchers have found this works is very interesting. It has to do with the student perception. So a student gets a score as they're playing a game or playing a sport, and they don't regard that as judgment about them, that they're really great or they're really lousy. It's more feedback of, I do well if I do this, or I don't do so well if I do that. So rewards in general are regarded as help intrinsic motivation if they're regarded as feedback for how I'm doing. If they're regarded as rewards or judgmental things like, oh, you're a good kid, I'll give you a snack, or, oh, you tried hard, I think you deserve this, or whatever. Think of a grade that you give a week after somebody studied something. That's interpreted more judgmentally rather than as feedback, and that tends to undermine intrinsic motivation. So it's all in a kind of a sensitive way of how the student interprets the feedback or the reward. So a badge, if everybody gets the badge, there's not much feedback there. If you get a badge because you've worked hard and you feel like you've earned it, that's your intrinsic motivation. So again, it's fascinating stuff. If you ever want to read the official research, Ed Deci and Ryan are the researchers out of Rochester who did this groundbreaking research. Cool stuff for me anyway. Andy, you've been very quiet. Any other thoughts? Deb, any other thoughts? And Deb, I'm not hearing you, so maybe you could turn your. There you go. It's still muted. Deb, the mic mute is if you move your mouse, it's at the bottom left corner of your Zoom window. Oh well, I wish I could lip read. So one of the new advances in artificial intelligence, seriously, is the ability of computers to lip read, and at something like a 95% accuracy, which is pretty cool. Okay, other thoughts, comments, words of wisdom, words of critique, questions?
Like that might be it. Scott, I thank you a ton for giving us your time tonight and the preparation that went into this. I totally appreciate it. Everybody who attended tonight gets a raffle ticket in our breakout box giveaway, which we'll do in January prior to P&C. My hope is that whoever wins goes to P&C so I can just hand it to them. They're right now sitting on my kitchen table, but I'm hoping rather than shipping it that I can just hand it to you. That's the goal. So, and then stay tuned, of course, in the spring because Sarah's leading a book discussion on the book Launch by A.J. Giuliani. And we're also going to do a sort of online makerspace webinar. We're hoping that Troxel will actually do that because they can show us all the stuff. So we're hoping to capitalize on that partnership. So thanks so much. And I'll see a bunch of you at P&C apparently. That's awesome. Great. Good stuff.
Jen, let me give one shameless plug.
Okay.
I didn't have put any, and I only mentioned Lehigh just in the introduction, but we have a very interesting instructional technology master's and doctorate, and also a technology use in the school certificate, a 4-course certificate. Much of that is, well, the 4-course certificate is fully online. So if you're in Pittsburgh or Delaware or whatever, you can take full advantage of that. And the Game Design for Learning course is not online. That's on campus, but many of you are within reach of our campus. That course will be taught by somebody who has her doctorate, has worked at Harvard in their game design for learning group, and it will be a fantastic course. And if you are interested in any of this stuff, one of your fellow Keystones started our program, somebody I met this summer at KTI. And she is now just applying for her doctorate as a way of extending her deep interest in technology and education. So if any of you are interested, feel free to contact me. Thanks for the opportunity, Jen. Great meeting all of you.
Scott, I think you and Sarah and I are going to hang out for a couple minutes if you can so we can talk about me possibly coming over to Lehigh and bringing some kids.
Sure.
So that'd be great. All right. So thanks, everybody. And I'm anxious to see you all at P&C and apparently at IU 21 as well, Andy. It's awesome.
Jen, one of the things that I sent to P&C and didn't get a response on, had to PAECT, didn't get a response on, was an offer to bring the Vive system to P&C so that participants there could experience that. It's only one person at a time who can do it. And I probably sent it to the wrong person, and whoever read it,
All right.
didn't think about that. But
let me. We have an online board meeting coming up in the next week or so.
okay.
We have a physical board meeting in State College in January. So let me make a note to ask if we can do that. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is having VR headsets available at the PAECT booth.
Cool.
Probably a different brand, I'm sure, but we went with like a $10 version.
Yeah.
Just to give people a taste. But if we could maybe run that in conjunction for a set time, maybe each day, like do an hour, that would be totally cool.
This is a little different. This is this system is in a class by itself.
So, right.
Only one person can experience it at a time. And I mean, it's such a crazy thing that the Franklin Institute has a permanent exhibit with that as its feature. The Art Institute in Chicago is doing the same kind of a thing. So it's a special thing. We would need a little, hopefully enclosed space. You know, so we
Okay.
can talk about that. But after you come to Lehigh and experience this, you'll get an idea of what it is.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll definitely talk to, if it's something we can work out, I'll talk to Brandon and Scott and see what Pete and C can put together maybe. I would, certainly encourage you to, perhaps hop out to, Shippensburg and join us for Summit at some point too, and see what we can do with the participants at Summit this year.
That's a possibility. That would be very exciting.
That'd be awesome. Cool. So I was wondering if maybe we should try to set up Gen visiting now with both of us here.
Sounds good.
And our calendars open. I think I saw an email that Ed was rescheduling the group of students for the field trip to next Thursday.
Yes.
So maybe we could tack on to the end of that.
So he's coming at 12:30 on Thursday. And I don't know how long he's planning to